During one summer vacation, all the students from Class 2A of Hamanoa High School found themselves in an abandoned school building in the middle of a forest. Panic spread among them when they realized they had been abducted. The door seemed jammed, blocking their escape. Makoto, once among the students, tried breaking a window to flee. He wished to escape, but found iron bars blocking his way. Claiming to be the karate club captain, he vowed to find an exit. A friend cautioned him about a piece of glass lodged in his forehead, urging awareness of his surroundings. Makoto apologized and suggested leaping out, but his friend disagreed, doubting Makoto's courage. This made Makoto ponder. A girl, Sayatome Rieka, known for her smarts and wealth, accused him of bumping into her. While Makoto's friend praised Sayatome's composure, Makoto felt shy and hid behind his friend. Teased for his fear of girls, Makoto confessed his unease, especially since Sayatome had previously ignored him. Overhearing that, Sayatome admitted she didn't know his name, leaving Makoto crestfallen, comforted by his friend. Suddenly, 2 armed men barged in, warning the students not to move. Despite the shock, Makoto acted, attempting to kick one, but was easily thrashed. Impressed, the man threatened Makoto, but Sayatome intervened, warning of actions from her family. The students admired her courage. The man, with sunglasses, missed striking Sayatome intentionally, warning her of consequences before taking her away, making her their prime target. As Sayatome departed, Makoto noticed her trembling, realizing she shielded him, sparing him as the main target. Confused by her actions, he prayed for her safety. A voice from the classroom speaker revealed the students were in a death game. In the broadcasting room, men in black watched, including Sayatome herself, the mastermind. The butlers from Sayatome's house, bribing the students' parents, orchestrated the kidnapping, turning an old building into a deadly game with Sayatome's family's wealth. Taoju, the man in black shades, praised Sayatome's acting and asked if all this was necessary. Sayatome said it was, revealing the game was to make Makoto like her. She explained the suspension bridge effect, where fear can seem like love, and planned to make Makoto fall for her through the game. Sayatome admitted she watched Makoto closely and blushed at their earlier interaction. Taoju suggested she confess her feelings, but Sayatome said she got too nervous and often acted harshly around Makoto. Taoju suggested there were better ways, but Sayatome argued she couldn't talk to him normally, so kidnapping was her only option. Taoju asked what she liked about Makoto. Embarrassed, Sayatome accused him of being a pervert. In the classroom, a student challenged the authority, but the man in charge used a fake weapon to scare him. The man was more scared than the student because the weapons were fake for safety. Sayatome hurried her butlers as all students were told to gather in the hallway. Taoju and Sayatome arrived, with Sayatome appearing as a hostage. Taoju picked Makoto to play the first game with Sayatome. Sayatome told Makoto not to risk himself, but he decided to protect her. Sayatome found this attractive. Taoju explained the game. Makoto and Sayatome had to dodge a big iron ball for 30 minutes. Makoto held Sayatome's hand to run together, making her happy. She blushed, while Makoto focused on staying safe. Sayatome got tired from running and yelled at Makoto to stop. She noticed her sweaty hand and pulled it back. Makoto, confused, said they had to keep running because the ball might catch them. The person controlling the ball tried to slow it down, but made a mistake, causing it to speed up and chase Sayatome. She ran for her life and shouted for help on the walkie-talkie. Taoju came to help, but the ball crushed him. Sayatome thought it was over, but Makoto saved her just in time. They ended up on the ground together, and Sayatome accidentally said Makoto's name. When Makoto asked how she knew his name, she thanked him sincerely for saving her life. Taoju interrupted them, declaring them winners since the ball was broken. After the game, Makoto returned to the classroom, unable to forget Sayatome's flushed face. Sayatome couldn't stop thinking about their moment either. Taoju said they cleared the first game and would play again tomorrow. Sayatome felt they needed to make the game safer. Taoju told the students about their accommodations, surprising them with the facilities provided. All the students were taken to their rooms, which were ready for them. When Makoto walked into his room, he was surprised by how fancy it was, like a royal palace. The next day, everyone gathered in a classroom. Makoto talked with his friends about their rooms, and they all said theirs were like normal hotel rooms. Makoto wondered why his was so fancy and if he was the only one. Turns out, 𝐨𝐤𝐝 had designed Makoto's room herself. It had everything, even a Mona Lisa painting on the wall. When 𝐨𝐤𝐝 greeted Makoto in the classroom, they briefly chatted about the game. Makoto's friend was surprised to see them talking so easily. He asked if something had happened between them the day before, but 𝐨𝐤𝐝 said no. Then, an announcement came on saying the next game was about finding a hidden bomb. The students had to find it and stop it within an hour, or the building would be destroyed. The bomb wasn't real, though. It was tied to 𝐨𝐤𝐝. She wanted to be alone with Makoto and pretend to find it to make him confess his love. But Makoto was too fast for her. Meanwhile, in the control room, the servants were taking a break. Makoto, after searching through several corridors, concluded that the bomb might be concealed in one of the rooms. His room stood out as the most luxurious, raising suspicions. Upon entering, he began rummaging through the drawers. 𝐨𝐤𝐝 followed, appearing utterly fatigued. Makoto questioned her presence, and she hastily explained that she also found the room suspicious, though her true motive was shamelessly pursuing him. She locked the door to prevent interference, and they both commenced the search for the explosive. 𝐨𝐤𝐝 pretended to discover the bomb beneath the bed, though she was uncertain which wires to cut for deactivation since it was a fake. She discreetly contacted 𝐥𝐨𝐽, inquiring about the significance of black and white wires and whether she could cut any of them since it was a dummy. 𝐥𝐿jew's sudden realization revealed the bomb's authenticity. They couldn't risk Makoto discovering their ruse with a cheap imitation, so they procured a genuine bomb. Now, if 𝐨𝐤𝐝 cut the wrong wire, the bomb would indeed detonate. Her body broke in a cold sweat at the revelation. 𝐥𝐿jewhad to apologize to 𝐨𝐤𝐝 because he accidentally bought a real bomb instead of a fake one. He explained that he had been very tired lately, which led to this terrible mistake. Suddenly, two of the butlers rushed out of the broadcasting room, shouting for 𝐨𝐤𝐝. They urgently needed to get her to safety. Running frantically, they nearly collided with two students who were surprised to see them there, as they were supposed to be in a secure area. The butlers reached Makoto's room, but it was locked tight. Despite banging on the door, they realized it was soundproof and their efforts were futile. To their horror, they also discovered they had forgotten the room key. Hastily, they sprinted back to the broadcasting room to retrieve the keys, encountering the same students on their way. Meanwhile, inside the room, Makoto and 𝐨𝐤𝐝 deliberated over which wire to cut. 𝐨𝐤𝐝 insisted on making the cut herself and urged Makoto to find a safe place to escape to. Feeling guilty for putting Makoto in danger, 𝐨𝐤𝐝 believed she should take full responsibility for their predicament. However, Makoto comforted her, reassuring her that he wouldn't let her carry the burden alone. Taking the cutter from her, he insisted on making the decision himself. Moved by his gesture, 𝐨𝐤𝐝 insisted on sharing the responsibility and grabbed hold of the cutter. Together, they decided to cut the black wire. Their hearts raced as they brought the cutter near the wire. With a tense moment, they snipped the wire, but to their dismay, the bomb's timer continued ticking. With only 4 seconds remaining, Makoto cradled 𝐨𝐤𝐝 in his arms and laid them both on the bed, shielding her with his body. Even though he knew it probably wouldn't help against a bomb, he felt compelled to try and keep her safe. 𝐨𝐤𝐝 blushed as she felt his warmth enveloping her. As the timer reached 0, they braced for the explosion, but nothing happened. Makoto breathed a sigh of relief, realizing they had been spared. 𝐨𝐤𝐝 clung to him tightly, her heart racing, unable to focus on anything but the sensation of being held by Makoto. Eventually, Makoto politely asked her to let go, and she immediately complied, realizing her clinginess. He thanked her for being by his side, finding comfort in her presence. 𝐨𝐤𝐝, however, switched to her cold demeanor, insisting she could have managed on her own. Meanwhile, in the broadcasting room, it was revealed that the bomb was a fake, and 𝐥𝐿jew's had deceived 𝐨𝐤𝐝. His companions criticized him for not keeping them informed, causing unnecessary fear. 𝐥𝐿jew defended his actions, believing that keeping 𝐨𝐤𝐝 in the dark would make the game more intense. 𝐨𝐤𝐝, furious with 𝐥𝐿jew, confronted him and delivered a punch labeled God Job Punch, expressing both anger and gratitude simultaneously. 𝐥𝐿jew was left baffled by her mixed emotions. Back in Makoto's room, he couldn't shake off thoughts of his time with 𝐨𝐤𝐝. Meanwhile, 𝐥𝐿jew, bruised from the encounter, inquired about the next game, to which 𝐨𝐤𝐝 responded by presenting him with a swimsuit, intending to further fluster him. Makoto and his friend ate dinner at the cafeteria. They were curious why the game admins were so friendly. The food was delicious, thanks to chefs hired by the 𝐈 family. Makoto mentioned it had been a while since the last game. 𝐈 wanted to join Makoto for dinner, but hesitated and sat nearby. She was determined to get his attention during the game. Then, a girl asked Makoto to play soccer, and he agreed. 𝐈 felt jealous and wondered about their relationship. Makoto's friend noticed how close they were, surprising 𝐈. Nagahama Chihiro, Makoto's childhood friend, often played with boys and was popular at school. 𝐈 tried to convince herself their friendship was nothing more. Meanwhile, Chihiro told Makoto's friend she knew everything about Makoto, even bathing together. Makoto said they only did that as kids. 𝐈 felt crushed, realizing she had never even seen Makoto's body, while Chihiro had. Chihiro became an enemy to 𝐈. 𝐈 rarely cared about others, but she remembered Chihiro's name now. Chihiro had become a threat in 𝐈's mind. As the students finished eating, a butler entered with a roulette wheel to choose 5 participants. Everyone hoped not to get picked. The butler stopped the wheel at 𝐈 and Makoto. The other 3 would be random. 𝐈 worried Chihiro might get picked too. She feared Chihiro would stick to Makoto if chosen. Chihiro was picked last. 𝐈 was upset but hoped her plan would still work. The butler then claimed they needed to change into swimsuits. In the girls' locker room, 𝐈 and Chihiro were getting ready to swim. Chihiro wondered why they had to wear swimsuits. 𝐈 had a plan to get Makoto's attention by wearing a daring swimsuit. She changed and glanced at Chihiro, who noticed and joked about 𝐈 staring too much, despite them both being girls. 𝐈 felt awkward about the sudden touch from Chihiro. She couldn't understand how Chihiro could be so cheerful. Chihiro tried to encourage 𝐈, admitting she was scared too, but believed they'd be fine if they stuck together. She left, feeling embarrassed for showing vulnerability. 𝐈 wondered if Chihiro was truly a good person, but reminded herself they were enemies. She changed into her swimsuit, which was extra small. She was eager to catch Makoto's eye. Chihiro joined everyone in the classroom, where the boys were also in swimsuits. Makoto questioned why they were in a classroom instead of at a beach or pool, considering the circumstances. He asked Chihiro about 𝐈. Just then, 𝐈 appeared in an oversized dress shirt, looking extremely shy. Taoju, seeing her on a screen in the broadcasting room, screamed angrily. He was upset that 𝐈 hadn't followed the plan and called her names. He then calmed down and pressed a button, causing water to flow into the classroom. While everyone was focused on the water, 𝐈 was determined to get Makoto's attention. In the game, they had to find a password to unlock the door before the room filled with water. Clues in the form of quizzes scattered around the room held the answers to the password. They had just 30 minutes before the room would be completely underwater. One of the boys immediately searched for quizzes, while Makoto suggested breaking the door. His friend criticized Makoto for not thinking first. Makoto complained to Chihiro, who agreed with his plan. 𝐈 advised them to stay calm and search for the quizzes. She found one and quickly solved it, reassuring everyone they could escape if they worked together calmly. Makoto realized she was right. 𝐈 knew where all the quizzes were hidden and their answers, but decided to keep it a secret for later. As the room flooded and Makoto felt threatened, Satome planned to use her body to distract him. Makoto found a quiz but didn't know the answer. 𝐈 deliberately got close to him, but Chihiro interrupted, suggesting a different approach to reach another quiz. 𝐈 was surprised by Chihiro's suggestion, thinking it was bold. She believed Chihiro didn't have proper boundaries with boys and saw her as a troublemaker. Despite feeling uncomfortable, 𝐈 waited until the right moment to reveal the answers. When the room filled with water and all the quizzes were collected, 𝐈 had a chance to talk to Makoto. She wondered if he noticed her. Taking the chance, she said the right passcode. Other students asked her how she knew it, and she said she'd been thinking about it and finally figured it out. She went into the water and swam to the keypad to enter the code. Just as she was about to input it, she got a painful leg cramp. It hurt a lot, and she struggled to breathe. She nearly fainted when Chihiro showed up and helped her. Makoto also arrived and entered the passcode. The water drained out, and everyone got saved. 𝐈 sat up, catching her breath. Chihiro scolded her for risking her life to enter the passcode when she wasn't a good swimmer. 𝐈 was confused and asked why Chihiro was worried when they had never spoken before. Chihiro said they were friends, so naturally she would be worried. 𝐈𝐸 was puzzled at first, but then realized that Chihiro was naturally friendly and treated everyone as a friend. She smiled warmly and thanked Chihiro for saving her. 𝐴𝐲 was surprised to see 𝐈𝐸 acting like this. 𝐈𝐸 thought there was no reason for her to be so considerate of Chihiro since she treated everyone equally. Chihiro hugged Makoto in celebration, and 𝐈𝐸 quickly changed her mind again. 2 days had gone by since the last game. With no games to play, the students had to find ways to keep themselves entertained. 𝐈𝐸 sat in the cafeteria, thinking about how to approach Makoto. Suddenly, Chihiro called her over to join them at her table, where Makoto was already seated. 𝐈𝐸 happily joined them, feeling pleased to eat with a classmate for the first time. Chihiro surprised 𝐈𝐸 by inviting her to a pajama party with Makoto and another friend. 𝐈𝐸 was surprised by the offer and found it bold of Chihiro to suggest spending the night with Makoto so easily. 𝐈𝐸 had always found it hard to talk to Makoto, but Chihiro made it seem effortless. After some thought, 𝐈𝐸 politely declined. She wasn't used to being so friendly with classmates all of a sudden and feeling awkward about it. She apologized to Chihiro for saying no. Chihiro accepted 𝐈𝐸's answer and kept discussing the pajama night with Makoto and their friend. She mentioned sleeping over, and 𝐈𝐸 listened to their conversation. Eventually, she changed her mind and decided to go to the pajama party after all. Meanwhile, in the broadcast room, a butler told 𝐴𝐲 about the pajama party. Later, 𝐈𝐸 emerged from a changing room wearing a fancy black dress. Just as she was about to leave the broadcast room, 𝐴𝐲 stopped her and asked if she was going to a pajama party or a wedding party. He told her to change because she looked strange wearing a formal dress. She tried on several outfits, but none of them suited the theme. 𝐴𝐲 became really angry that she wasn't wearing pajamas when it was supposed to be a pajama party. He explained to her that pajama parties were meant to show off one's cute and casual side. Instead of wearing fashionable clothes, one should try to look a bit messy for extra points. He advised her to wear her regular pajamas, but 𝐈𝐸 refused. 𝐴𝐲 got furious and threatened to make her change forcibly if she didn't comply. 𝐈𝐸 got scared and gave in. 𝐈𝐸 met with Makoto and his friend in the hallway. She was wearing her usual pajamas, which showed a bit of her cleavage. She felt a little shy and uncomfortable being dressed like this in front of Makoto. Chihiro joined them shortly after, wearing a crop top with shorts. 𝐈𝐸 felt annoyed seeing her belly button exposed. She worried that she wouldn't stand out now and decided to cut 𝐴𝐲's pay. Chihiro complimented her pajamas, calling them cute, and asked Makoto for confirmation. Makoto agreed with Chihiro and admitted that they were cute. 𝐈𝐸 became happy and silently thanked 𝐴𝐲, which was the opposite of what she had been thinking a minute before. Meanwhile, 𝐴𝐲 was in the broadcast room complaining about her being stubborn. As the group walked towards a room, 𝐈𝐸 realized that this was the first time she would be spending time with Makoto outside the game. She wondered if she would even be able to talk to him without the game to rely on. The group had gone to Makoto's friend Yumi's room for their hangout. Yumi brought out snacks and drinks, mentioning he took advantage of the freedom the game admins had given them. 𝐴𝐲 had been keeping an eye on them from the broadcast room. 𝐈𝐸 asked what usually happened during pajama nights. She considered doing a Q&A, but since she already knew everything about Makoto, that game would have been boring for her. Yumi chuckled and suggested there had to be some love talk at pajama parties. Then he suddenly asked Makoto if he had a crush on anyone. 𝐈𝐸 became instantly alert because that was the only thing about Makoto she didn't know. Makoto simply said no, and Yumi called him boring. At first, 𝐈𝐸 felt disappointed by his answer, but then she realized it meant she didn't have any competition for Makoto's affections. She could make him more aware of her and carve out a place in his heart. Yumi explained that it didn't necessarily have to be someone you liked, but maybe someone you were curious about. He urged Makoto to at least say a single letter. 𝐈𝐸 listened closely, hoping he'd say her name initials, but he remained silent. She got upset and wondered if she would need to make the games more challenging from now on. Next, it was Chihiro's turn. She admitted she had feelings for someone in the past, but didn't provide details. 𝐈𝐸 wondered if it was Makoto. Yumi pressed Chihiro to reveal more, and she blurted out that it was a preschool teacher. 𝐈𝐸 sighed with relief. Next was Yumi's turn, and he said he only cared about his wife. 𝐈𝐸 was surprised to learn he was married. Makoto scoffed, mentioning he had a different wife before. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 couldn't believe it. Yumi always seemed harmless, so she was surprised to know he was a ladies' man. Seeing the confusion on 𝐈𝐸𝐼's face, Makoto clarified that Yumi was talking about anime. 𝐈𝐸𝐼's brain froze for a moment, and she asked how to register the marriage. Yumi apologized for the confusion and assured her he didn't have anyone, so he named an anime character instead. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 finally understood and jokingly referred to Yumi as Kawa. Yumi means sea and Kawa means river, so she mixed up the names because both are bodies of water. Makoto, Chihiro, and Yumi laughed at her innocent mistake. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 felt embarrassed but defended herself by saying she mixed up his name because it had to do with fluids. Chihiro took the joke further and called Yumi Mizu, which means water. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 let out a laugh, but she quickly composed herself. Noticing her laugh, Chihiro called Yumi Sora, which meant sky, and it made 𝐈𝐸𝐼 laugh again. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 said she knew his name now. She playfully said the wrong name again to tease Yumi more. Makoto saw 𝐈𝐸𝐼 laughing sincerely and said it was a new side of her. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 got nervous because of Makoto's sudden comment, and her hand accidentally knocked over a drink nearby. She quickly said sorry, and the others reassured her it was okay. But she kept apologizing, saying it wasn't like her. She felt her behavior wasn't appropriate for someone from the 𝐈𝐸𝐼 family. She admitted it was the first time she talked so much with her classmates and felt she needed to change. She looked horrified as she said this. Hearing her, Yumi punched Makoto and told him to apologize to 𝐈𝐸𝐼. Makoto did, clarifying he didn't mean any harm. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 always seemed distant, so seeing her laugh like that felt refreshing. Her mood brightened as she listened to Makoto. Even Yumi noticed the sudden change in her. 𝐥𝐨𝐤, in the broadcast room, watched it all with a smile. He remarked that this game was unintentionally affecting 𝐈𝐸𝐼. Seeing her happy now, he remembered the younger 𝐈𝐸𝐼, who used to be cold and gloomy. It warmed his heart to see her happy. It was already 2 a.m., but Chihiro and Yumi didn't want to end the night. They kept joking and teasing Makoto. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 needed to use the bathroom, so she left the room. The hallway was very dark, and the bathroom was at the end of it. Feeling a bit scared, 𝐈𝐸𝐼 decided to call 𝐥𝐴 on the radio. Suddenly, Makoto appeared behind her and startled her. He offered to accompany her to the bathroom because of the darkness. In the broadcast room, a butler called 𝐥𝐴 to show him 𝐈𝐸𝐼 and Makoto on a monitor. He was surprised to see them alone in front of the bathroom. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 thanked Makoto for waiting. As they walked back to the room, 𝐈𝐸𝐼 felt strangely comfortable in the spooky school building. She realized it was because of Makoto. 𝐥𝐴 and the butlers in the broadcast room commented on the good atmosphere between them. 𝐥𝐴 hoped 𝐈𝐸𝐼 would make progress soon since her plan of games gave her a chance to talk to Makoto more. In the hallway, Makoto asked 𝐈𝐸𝐼 why she changed her mind about joining them after declining at first. The butlers in the broadcast room hoped she'd say something sweet in response, but 𝐈𝐸𝐼, out of habit, turned cold and said she just wanted to see how commoners lived because she came from a different world than Makoto and his friends. The butlers facepalmed at that. Makoto walked a bit ahead of 𝐈𝐸𝐼 on the way back, and 𝐈𝐸𝐼 called 𝐥𝐴 nervously. She whispered that she was alone with Makoto, but didn't know what to talk about. She worried they'd reach the room before she could do anything. Instead of giving advice, 𝐥𝐴 refused. He told her the reason she hadn't been able to get close to Makoto so far was because she wasn't honest with him. He said she needed to change her behavior, not just regarding love, but in general for his guidance to be effective. He believed that Makoto would accept her feelings if she was honest with him about them. He turned off the communication and monitoring so 𝐈𝐸𝐼 could do something on her own. 𝐈𝐸𝐼 got anxious and threatened to cut his pay, but 𝐥𝐴 ended the call. 𝐥𝐴 knew that he probably wouldn't get any pay that month, but he wanted Saitome to make some advancement already, so it was necessary. He hoped that she could do something that day. After the call with 𝐥𝐴, 𝐈𝐸𝐼 said nothing until they reached the room. When they spotted the room, 𝐈𝐸𝐼 realized that her time was almost up. She was distressed that she hadn't been able to do anything. She wanted to be alone with Makoto for longer. 𝐥𝐴's words about her being honest rang in her head. Just as Makoto was about to open the door, 𝐈𝐸𝐼 stopped him with a hand on his arm. She was extremely flustered, but managed to say that she didn't want to go back yet. Makoto was confused and asked why she didn't want to go back. 𝐈 quickly pulled her hand back and blurted out that she needed to go to the bathroom as an excuse. Makoto pointed out they had just been there. In her head, 𝐈 cursed Taoju for leaving her to deal with this alone. If she could be honest with her feelings, she wouldn't have started this game in the first place. But she really wanted to tell him how happy she had been lately. She gulped and finally admitted that she had been happy. Makoto became even more confused and said going to the bathroom with her wasn't a big deal. 𝐈 clarified that she was answering his earlier question. She had lied before. He asked what the real reason was. 𝐈 couldn't say she joined them just because Makoto was there, but she could say something else. She told him she was happy when they invited her to play. She had never interacted with her classmates before, but they all accepted her. She firmly stated she had a lot of fun playing with them and thanked him. Makoto replied that he had fun with a friend too, referring to 𝐈. He believed Chihiro and Yumi felt the same. 𝐈 smiled brightly at that. As it got late, Makoto suggested they call it a night. But then they heard fireworks nearby, startling both of them. Chihiro burst out of the room, pushing Makoto aside. She smiled at the fireworks and suggested going to the roof for a better view. Makoto protested, worried they might get caught by the authorities. Chihiro reasoned that they were not escaping. They were just going to see the fireworks and then return. Makoto still thought it was dangerous, but Yumi was on board with the idea. He grabbed drinks and commented that the admins were strangely kind, so they wouldn't say anything. Makoto gave in and invited 𝐈 to go with them. 𝐈's eyes sparkled, and she headed to the roof with them. They all watched the fireworks happily, but Makoto thought about 𝐈. She was always composed and didn't involve herself with others. Turning to look at her, who was smiling in awe at the fireworks, he thought that he was able to see a little bit of her real self that day. Outside the school, Taoju sat in the heat, lighting up fireworks. He had decided not to help her, but still ended up doing this. He just hoped that she was enjoying it. With happiness spread all around, 𝐈's long night finally came to an end. The admins used to get up early to prepare for the next game. One of the butlers had prepared red rice because 𝐈 wanted to celebrate going from acquaintance to friend in Makoto's eyes. She happily munched on the food while Taoju had a discussion with the butler. All the butlers were putting in their full effort to bring 𝐈 and Makoto together. No matter how unreasonable the demand was, they always fulfilled their master's wishes. That was the butler's duty. In that day's death game, students were called outside for the first time since they arrived at the school. They chose the participants with a roulette like last time. One scared student, who had never participated in a game before, asked Makoto for tips. He assumed they would have to do some physical activities because they were brought outside and changed into their gym clothes. He told her to limber up just in case and advised 𝐈 to stay close to her for protection. 𝐈 blushed at that, but kept herself composed. Taoju, monitoring them nearby, waited for their conversation to end and announced the start of the game. He stated that it was the most dangerous game yet and uncovered a tiger in a cage nearby. Everyone was startled at the sight of the tiger. The challenge was to avoid this beast for 10 minutes. Taoju opened the door and the tiger came out. All the students started running in different directions in a panic. One of the students was sleeping amidst all this, and his friend threatened to leave him there to get eaten. However, the tiger was actually just a costume commissioned by the 𝐈 family. It was created by the world-class doll maker 𝐭𝐨𝐝, who was so skilled that no one could differentiate between his dolls and the real things. The 𝐈 family butlers had gone through a lot to acquire the tiger costume. The butler wearing the costume was determined to make their plan successful at any cost because the doll maker had worked tirelessly to make the tiger appear real. Of course, he had no actual way to eat the students, so he just had to stall for time. He pretended to look in the opposite direction so the students near him could escape. Some of them hid in a storehouse. The tiger gave them some time to hide and then entered the room to scare them. All the students were poorly hidden and could clearly be seen by anyone. This angered the tiger because it seemed like they wanted to be eaten. One of them was fast asleep, completely exposed. The tiger turned around and left the room because it couldn't do anything there. Makoto and 𝐈 were together, trying to escape from the beast. 𝐈 told Makoto that she had sprained her ankle and couldn't run anymore. It was actually part of her plan to get him to carry her like a princess. Makoto fell for it and carried her on his back to help her, even though he didn't realize her true intentions. She got frustrated because her plan didn't seem to be working out as she had hoped. Although she was still close to him, she didn't find the situation romantic at all. She tried to convince herself to be satisfied with the physical connection they had. However, she started sweating and felt embarrassed. Without realizing it, she pushed Makoto away a little because she thought guys wouldn't like sweaty girls. Instead of being bothered by it, Makoto just told her to hold on tighter and even suggested she wrap her arms around his front. When she followed his instructions, Makoto felt her against his back and became flustered. Just then, the beast responsible for the suspension bridge effect appeared.